What's the scariest science fact the public knows nothing about? Scientific literature conclusion on Alzheimer's disease and other neurodegenerative diseases in general is that the diseases start decades before the first obvious symptoms, and that we need to treat them at this stage. When you exhibit obvious symptoms, it's too late. Your brain is already mush. If you get diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 65, you had the disease since your early 40s at least, and you experienced very mild symptoms, but didn't notice it, and your brain fought like heck to compensate the deficit. When you get diagnosed, your brain is already very severely damaged, and will never recover from the deficit. For 2 days in September of 1859, a massive solar flare was powerful enough to make hanging telegraph lines burst into flames from the induced current washed over the Earth. Another massive burst in 2012 only just missed Earth. It's not going to be pretty when our luck runs out. For me personally, the acidification of our oceans. You don't want to know what will happen if all plankton dies. Europa, even though smaller than Earth, has more water than all the bodies in the world combined. Nestle has zeroed in on your location. Insect population depletion. Alcohol increases the permeability of the blood barrier by unpredictable factors, which is why people die from an overdose on their normal drug dosages. CO2 levels are causing the pH levels in the ocean to move towards an acidic level. Not like burn yourself acid, just enough that it's causing an already noticeable impact to microorganisms at the bottom of the food chain. This may eventually lead to an ecological collapse. It seems to be impacting phytoplankton, which is responsible for producing a good chunk of the air you breathe as well. If the oceans go anaerobic, the atmosphere would become toxic. A similar event has occurred during one of or two of past mass extinction events. Our bodies have no way of knowing that we're breathing. If I could snap my fingers and replace all the oxygen in the room with inert gas, you wouldn't notice. You wouldn't start to choke or struggle. You'd just get sleepier and sleepier until you die. That's why carbon monoxide is so dangerous. If you have any sort of gas appliance in your building, invest in a detector. By the time AIDS was first discovered in the United States in 1981, 250,000 Americans were already infected with HIV. The actual amount of crude oil that's been pumped directly into the ocean. BP had high-definition 4K live footage of the pipe that ruptured and chose to censor it. And it's not just BP that's had an incident about this. Scientists were trying to study the effects of microplastics have on the human body and brain, but were unable to draw any reasonable conclusions because they could not find a control group. The greatest chemical contributor to IQ loss and violent behavior is lead, and it's still in millions of people's buildings. Oh, so that explains the boomers. Last time I had to go under the knife, I mentioned to the anesthesiologist that I read online that no one knows how anesthesia even works, and he kind of was like, yeah. Tetraethyl lead raised worldwide lead levels so significantly that they had to drill into Arctic ice to find an incontaminated sample. We all get cancer, but most are so little and small that they can't and won't hurt us. Well, that gives me a reason to drink alcohol. I'll just drink so much that I use alcohol to kill mine. People don't talk enough about the melting permafrost, and the associated positive feedback loops only accelerate what's already started. If an electrical line is damaged and is in contact with the floor, even walking away from it with big steps can cause a huge electrical potential difference between your feet and kill you. I'm sure there are plenty of people who know this, but personally I find it terrifying as heck. If the vacuum of space didn't block sound from reaching us, the sun would be as loud as a jackhammer everywhere on Earth. Everywhere at all times. And because sound travels slower than light, if the sun were to go out, it would take 8 minutes for the light to stop, but 13 years for the sound to stop. So life on a cold, dead Earth for 13 years, and still hearing the jackhammer scream of our dead sun. If you're enjoying the story so far, remember to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell. Leave a comment with your stories down below. Maybe I'll read them in my own video. Now let's get back to the video. Swimming in fresh water could expose you to Naegleria fowleri. I probably pronounced that terribly. A brain-eating amoeba that is fatal 97% of the time and is almost impossible to treat effectively. If you start showing any signs of rabies, you are going to die. Or at least in 99% of cases that happens. There actually is a story about one person who survived rabies, but whoo boy, it slapped them upside the face and they had to go through therapy, physical and mental, for years. There are millions and billions of dollars in research into how people buy crud. The missus took a year of psychology, and what they got the most research on is how to manipulate you and me into buying stuff we don't need. Mental illnesses we know little about. Making you want the new stuff that you don't need. We know a hell of a lot about how that works. That's marketing for you. Brain aneurysms can happen at any time to anyone, no matter what age you are or how healthy you are. If you're currently alive, you have a chance of getting a brain aneurysm. When you do get one, there's a 50% chance you'll just die immediately. Like you'll be alive 1 minute and then lying on the floor unconscious the next minute. Are the chances of actually getting a brain aneurysm at any moment low? Yeah, but it's still not zero. The chances of getting a brain aneurysm at any moment is low, but never zero. Take an Astronomy 101 course at your local community college. People have no idea the amount of and the variety of things that exist in space, that can and do happen, that would send us back to the Stone Age or outright annihilate life on Earth. I'm not talking asteroids, comets, and solar flares. Everyone knows those. I'm talking supernovas, gamma ray bursts, wandering planets, wandering black holes, and more. And none of it do we have any ounce of control over. The good thing is the galaxy and universe are unbelievably large, so our chances of being affected by those things are quite literally astronomically low. But it ain't zero, fam. It is estimated that by 2050, more than 10 million people will die due to antimicrobial resistance. Many people know, but nothing is done, and it is terrifying. For me, it's the permafrost scenario. The permafrost holds so much CO2, also known as methane, that when it thaws, we'll just skyrocket our levels, and there'll be nothing we can do about it. The first contraceptive pill was never tested on women. They tested it on men instead. Prions. I do not recommend researching. There is nothing to be done if you have prion disease. I want to know what they do in Antarctica with the windows and doors closed. I'll let the others have the easy ones. The inevitable displacement of Mexico City due to the abuse and lack of fresh water. It will be an international incident by their own making, displacing roughly 20 million people. Half of the utilities infrastructure is faulty, and the current leadership has no viable way to repair and maintain their current system. It's not a matter of if, but when the system collapses. Normal groundwater reserve use is 10% for any major city, and only under dire circumstances should it be used at all. Mexico City uses almost half their supply from the groundwater reserves annually. Current projections show a complete collapse within 15 years. You know, it's funny you say collapse, as the city is sinking because the aquifer is not being replenished. Geiger counters used to be incredibly easy to make, but now it is extremely hard to find non-irradiated materials to use as a reference point to count off of. In Yellowknife, NT Canada, there was a gold mine operating for 54 years, and a byproduct of that mining process was arsenic trioxide. 237,000 tons of it, enough to kill everything on the planet. They figured the best thing to do was bury it in permafrost. The problem is, it's starting to get warmer, so they have to figure out what to do with it. It's not a secret, it's just that nobody's talking about it. Gamma ray bursts. If everyone happens to be close enough and aimed exactly at Earth, we're basically all dead. The scariest ones are the ones not in this thread, because the public doesn't know about them. Prions are virtually indestructible. The world's soil is running out of nitrogen pretty rapidly, and most farmland is essentially zombie farmland where it would be completely unusable without fertilizer. And if we ever run out of minerals needed for fertilizer, we are rather screwed. And on top of that, the nutritional value of most fruit and vegetables isn't in a great state either. There's so much crop inbreeding, one bad virus in the US could tank production for certain crops. The chemical manufacturer that invented and produced Zyklon B, the gas used to murder groups of people at concentration camps in World War II by a certain mustache man, was called IG Farben, a subsidiary of BASF. BASF not only still exists, but is also the largest producer of industrial chemicals in the world. Viruses stay with you forever, and a lot flare up later in life just to screw you up. Nobody knows if COVID will come back in already infected people as something worse. Soil vitamins are going bye-bye, and antibiotics are not working anymore. As somebody on antibiotics currently for, my body's pretty fucked up, this is terrifying. Scientists were studying the effect of PFAS and realized the same thing as with microplastics. It's so rampant they couldn't find a control group that did not have any in their blood. An extinction-level asteroid could hit Earth with only a few days' notice. Asteroids can appear very quickly from what appears to be nowhere. There was nothing we could do to prevent it from hitting. The Earth doesn't give two craps about us and our existence. We can do a lot to impact it, but it'll happily wipe us out of existence, just like millions of living things before us, and go on happily without us. Our life and entire human history is a forgettable moment in Earth's history. There's this concept called the false vacuum delay. Basically, you know how an electron can orbit an atom, just roll with it, and how an orbit a high state sometimes, then release energy and drops to a low state. That low state is called the vacuum state. It's the lowest state a thing can be in. It's the default, but there are some examples of a false vacuum. Basically, imagine a ball rolling down a hill. The false vacuum is a little valley it gets caught in, but it could still go lower. Long story short, for various reasons, we are afraid one or more fields in our universe might be in a false vacuum state. If that false vacuum were to collapse, which could happen randomly via quantum tunneling, or if we pump enough energy into the area, or through a dozen other theoretical mechanisms, then the universe as we know it goes bye-bye. Everything we know ceases to exist from that point into a bubble which expands at the speed of light, and within that bubble, nothing we know can never exist again. It's not destruction, it's erasure and change. Within the bubble, the laws of physics will be different. Chemistry might not exist. Biological life might not be possible. The circles are indications of how certain we are. We're positive our universe exists in a bigger circle. We're fairly sure in the smaller circles. Long story short, we're fairly sure that we are in a false vacuum. That's the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. I would tell you to like and subscribe and all that goofy stuff right now, but it's Christmas! Have a Merry Christmas! Thank you for watching. Stick around, and I will see you next time. Hasta la pasta, now I slap you in the face.